And this is some information about the number of African Americans lynched in the United States between 1859 and 1962. There's another form of informal brutality and terror. Well, one of the consequences of the criminal justice system is seen as an instrument of terror, of course, is that negative sanctions should be, again, disproportionately allocated to members of dominant and subordinate groups. And these are more modern data, looking at the proportion of African American males, Latino males, and white males imprisoned in state or federal prison. And what we see here is of young males between the ages of about 18 and 28, about 32% of these males are either in prison wanted for under arrest, awaiting trial, or in jail. And these are the figures for the other three. These are numbers that most of you are probably familiar with, or something like it. Well, it turns out that these disproportionate rates of imprisonment are not just restricted to the United States. You can find them in other social systems as well. For instance, in the United States, the incarceration rate by rate, or the difference, is about 6.5 to 1 in the United States. The United States, as we know, has the highest imprisonment rate of all societies, and it differs from what you find in England and Wales, which doesn't tend to imprison as many people in its population. But what's constant is the ratio between white and black prisoners, again about 6.5 to 1. So let's skip over in the interest of time. This phenomenon of dominance being disproportionately prosecuted, arrested, serving longer prison sentences than subordinates doing that than dominance is really quite generalized across social systems, whether it be the United States or the Maori in New Zealand or the Aborigines in Australia. In society after society, we see basically the same pattern. Skip this, that's in the interest of time. If our argument that the installation of one of the functions of the disproportionate use of violence by the state is the installation of fear in the population, then we should find evidence that subordinates are going to be more afraid of the criminal justice system than dominants will. And to support this, we did a study way back in 1996 using a random sample of citizens in Los Angeles County and asked them a very simple question. And the question was, how afraid are you of the LAPD? And we asked this question to whites, blacks, Latinos, and Asians, and got the following results. These data thus far control for nothing. Control for educational do not control for educational differences or class differences or anything else. Simply the straight up and down results. And what we find here is that there is a fairly linear relationship between the status of the ethnic group and the degree to which that group feared the police, where whites feared the police the least and blacks the most. And these findings held constant even when we factored in things like education, criminal record, age, gender, and anything else we could think of in this data set. Well, these differences are not simply restricted to race, but can also be found with respect to social class. That is to say, with and without controls for other extraneous variables, poor people are much more afraid of the police than wealthier people are. And we would argue for understandable reasons. Okay, these individual difference factors, we argue that if the criminal justice system is to function the way it's designed to function, there should be a matching between the personality predispositions or the political ideologies of workers in institutions and the nature of the institutions themselves. And one of the individual difference factors we've been interested in looking at is a dimension we call social dominance orientation. And social dominance orientation is a set of items, a set of questions, which is designed to look at people's support of group differences, group oppression, and group inequality. And items of this, in this scale, are things like to get ahead in life is sometimes necessary to step on other groups, or inferior groups should stay in their place, superior groups should dominate inferior groups. Of the outburst of all these, all groups should be given an equal chance in life. There's 16 questions like this. One of the things we found in study after study, in nation after nation, and we've tested this in about 35 to 40 different nations, is that there's a strong and positive association between endorsement of these desires to dominate other groups, to have hierarchical relationships, and support for severe negative social sanctions. This is a data set showing support for the death penalty in the United States and support for social dominance orientation as mediated by ideological beliefs such as general deterrence, specific deterrence, and retribution. That is to say, the argument we make here is that these can be seen as rationalizations in support of the death penalty in the service of the maintenance of group-based inequality. The matching hypothesis. We're arguing that there should be this matchup between people's ideological predispositions and the kinds of institutions they're going to be in. So that he organizations should be disproportionately staffed by he people, that is to say with people with high levels of social dominance orientation, while as ha organizations, warm and fuzzy organizations, should be disproportionately staffed by people with low levels of SDO. Examples of this differential sorting can be seen in a very early study we did, looking at SDO levels as a function of the kind of institution people were exposed to. And we looked at the public defenders in the Public Defender's Office in Los Angeles, students at UCLA, people selected for jury duty in Los Angeles County, and street officers of the LAPD, and gave them all a social dominance orientation test, and got the following result. That is to say, public defenders are relatively warm and fuzzy. These students here are intermediate, and police officers are almost off the scale with respect to this dimension. And these findings hold constant even when you control for things like gender and educational level and class and all other kinds of demographic differences. Now, how does this happen, that people with certain ideological predispositions get matched up with certain kinds of institutions? There are at least 4 processes which could be responsible for this. One is self-selection processes. People with certain kinds of values and ideologies will naturally be attracted to certain kinds of institutions. Another one is institutional selection, to the degree to which social institutions actually can pick and choose who gets into them. There will be a tendency for hierarchically oriented social institutions to pick out people with hierarchically pleasing values. Institutional socialization. As long as people are exposed to the institution more and more, their political values tend to be consistent with those of the institution as a whole, and differential reward and retention. That is to say, for people who are mismatched, there will be a dropout of people belonging to those institutions. Sorting mechanisms. Well, one of the